You now know that zone 2 is really beneficial for your health, but you are wondering how does that fit into your training week. So the purpose of this video is to go into how can you personalize zone 2 training to fit in with your schedule. So just a quick recap, zone 2 is where we are using fats primarily for fuel, and the whole point is that we are increasing your aerobic threshold. So zone 2 is not just beneficial for your performance, but also for your mitochondrial health and metabolic function. But before we go into how does that look within your training week, we need to make sure that you are training within zone 2. And like I have previously said, there are numerous ways we can do that, but the best ways you are going to do that at home are by using a heart rate monitor or by using something called RPE, which is rate of perceived exertion. And this one is still the best one for me, mainly because I don't have a heart rate monitor, but also it allows you to see where your zone 2 is on any given day. And when you are using RPE, it is where you can still hold a conversation, but it just is on the brink of becoming too uncomfortable to have a conversation with someone else, and you would like them to do the majority of the talking. When you are using a heart rate monitor, it can differ by about 20 beats per minute per day. So a good estimate to start with is something called a Maffetone formula, which is basically assessing or estimating your maximum aerobic function. So that is 180 minus your age. So for me, that is 180 minus 31. So that would be 149 is where I would start with my heart rate zone. Now, depending on my physical fitness, if I am more deconditioned, then I would probably subtract 5 or 10. Also, if I am suffering with a minor illness, again, I would go for a lower heart rate. So that would go down to about 139 beats per minute. But if for my age, I felt I was more physically conditioned, then I could potentially add 5 or 10 beats. So that would go up to 159. And that is where you have a discrepancy of about 20 beats per minute. Now let's go into how does this fit within your week. The sad thing is with zone 2 training, there is no magic formula or magic number of how many minutes you need to do each week to get the most benefit from it. But it's all relative to you, like anything within health and fitness. So if you are primarily deconditioned, you don't do exercise on a regular basis, or if you do exercise daily, but it is mainly in resistance training, which is what I used to do a lot of, then you would probably be aiming for 30 minutes 3 times a week. That is a really good starting point. The more that you are able to incorporate this into your weekly routine, you can then try and increase the sessions by 30 minutes up to 45 and then up to 1 hour, and keep going as you see fit. And then eventually, once it becomes too easy by doing, let's say, 3 1-hour sessions, you can add another session in. But let's say you are starting probably where I am at the moment. So I've got a decent level of aerobic fitness. So I would be aiming for 45 minutes to 1 hour sessions 3 times a week. And again, I would be adding in more volume into them individual sessions until it comes to a point where doing more than 1 hour or 1.5 hours in one session becomes too restrictive on my daily routine. Then I can add another session in later on in the week and keep it at 1 hour intervals. But the main point is you need to base it on where your level of fitness is. So if you are a beginner or you mainly do resistance training, start with doing 30 minutes 3 times a week. Obviously, if you cannot hit them 3 times a week, then do it once a week. Just do something that will be a greater benefit to zone 2 training and your aerobic function. If you are more advanced or you have a better aerobic function, so I would put myself in this bracket, then I would be doing 45 to 1 hour sessions 3 to 4 times a week. Now, when you do zone 2 training, it doesn't really take too much in a taxing way. So when you are doing it, you are conscious about you are exercising, but once you've finished exercising, you don't feel as though you've really been through a hard slog of a workout. So that's why it's quite beneficial, and the way I incorporate it into my week at the moment is around my heavy lifting sessions, because then I'm prioritizing my lifting before this comes in. So now you know how to assess whether you are in zone 2 and how frequently you should be doing it per week depending on your physical fitness. The next thing is, how do you actually go about doing it? So what is the best exercises to achieve zone 2 training? So in my opinion, you are best doing it in a controlled environment. So that is mainly indoors. If you start going to run outside or cycle outside, there's a lot of things you've got to factor in, whether that be traffic lights, you've got traffic, you've got uphills, downhills, etc. There's a lot of things that you cannot control. Whereas inside, you've got an inclined treadmill where you are walking briskly, you have got a stationary spin bike, you have got a rowing machine, you've got a ski erg, and it's all dependent on how you are able to control your zone 2 training. So for me, I maintain it on a spin bike. I can look at the wattage, I can then estimate where I should be each week, and then I will improve as I feel fit. On an inclined treadmill, you can set the same amount of speed but change the gradient, or you can change the speed and keep the same gradient. There's a lot of variables that you can control, so you can go straight into it. And that is the thing that I would like to say. is that if you aren't training for hours per week, because a lot of these studies and the evidence comes from cyclists in the Tour de France, where they can cycle and they're training for hours upon hours per week. So it doesn't need to be that efficient. Whereas the whole point of this channel and the way I'm taking it is that we are aware that people work long hours. So when it comes to optimizing their health in terms of fitness, they need to make sure that their training is efficient. So that is why using an indoor modality such as a spin bike, incline treadmill, a stepper, a rower, something that you can maintain zone 2 and measure it for on a regular basis, means that the amount of time you spend in the gym, you are spending more time within zone 2, which is more efficient for your health. How to tackle a session? So I don't go straight into zone 2 training. I obviously do a bit of stretching beforehand. So if I go on a spin bike, I do about 5-10 minutes of stretching. When I get on the bike, I do about a 5 to 10 minute ramp up. So I will slowly get up to a certain wattage that I know I'm close to zone 2 at. And I'll just hold that because I find that the more that I warm up, then it's easier for me to have a higher output when I'm doing zone 2, which is more beneficial for me. So I spend about 5-10 minutes stretching, go into a 5 to 10 minute ramp up, and then I go into my zone 2 training for however long that I've set for that day. And the most important thing I would take away from this is do not let it get to you if you aren't able to incorporate it within your training week, because there probably are a lot of things you are doing zone 2, whether that be a brisk walk with a dog, it could be going hiking. There's a lot of things that you may disregard as zone 2 training that you are actually doing on a regular basis. The last thing I will finish on is progressive overload. So if you are familiar with any type of training, you want to increase your output, your intensity, your duration, etc. every time you go to training, and that still applies to zone 2. So like I said earlier on in the video, you want to go from 3 30-minute sessions, you want to increase that to maybe 45 minutes for 3 sessions. It will get to a point where time is a limiting factor. So then hopefully by that point, you are building up a big enough aerobic base. And when you are able to do so, you can then increase the power during them sessions. So for me, I sit at a certain wattage on a spin bike. Let's say I maximize the time that I've got to spend on zone 2 training, then I will try and push the power output per that session. And that is the way you just keep going and pushing the boundary, because in the context of zone 2, the more you can output whilst using fats as a fuel and using oxygen to burn it will make you more efficient at the top end when you are going all out in any exercise. I hope this makes sense, and like I said, if there are any other video suggestions, by all means comment below or reach out to me directly. As always, I put a disclaimer in any video that it's not medical advice or training advice. It is for informational purposes only, and you should always use it within your own judgment. If you've got this far, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.